you so much for having us here at beautiful Mar-a-Lago.
Well, thank you very much.
So we have a lot of questions, Mr. President. Just to start off, your NFT collection has featured your life and your celebratory career. And your collectors have sent in a lot of questions. We're going to try to get to them all, but please feel free to put your questions in the chat and we will begin. So these are your questions for Mr. President Trump. Starting with Gloria from Edinburgh, Texas. Mr. President, Gloria says, I would like to tell you that you are adored by the Hispanic community in the Rio Grande Valley of South Texas. Gloria's question to you, sir, is will you have a rally in South Texas before you win back the White House?
Well, the answer is yes, and I appreciate that nice question, and I love the Hispanics, and they're liking me a lot because we're just seeing, polls just came out, and we're doing great with the Hispanics. No Republican has done this before, and there's something that just seems to work. It's a natural chemistry, but it's terrific, and I appreciate that question. I'll be there. We'll be in South Texas and all over Texas, and we'll be in a lot of other places. We'll be working very hard. We're leading in the polls against Biden and against the Republicans by like 55 points. That's a lot. So we're going to be all over, but we will be there, and hopefully we'll see Gloria. That'll be great.
All right, we're going to Jake, who says, after arriving in the White House, at what point did you realize what you were up against?
Well, the first thing when I arrived, I was looking at this magnificent building because it's so magnificent outside and in, and maybe inside is even more beautiful than the outside. Most people don't get the privilege of seeing it. And I remember the first night I stood opposite the Lincoln bedroom, the famous Lincoln bedroom, and I said, it's so surreal, it's so incredible. But I said to Melania, and I said to a couple of other people that were standing with us at the time, do you believe this? This is just so incredible. So that was my first experience. Then I started getting hit left and right.
Started pretty quick.
That's right. It started like from the time I came down the escalator is really when it started. A lot of phony stuff happened. And so I said, well, that's enough of this. We're going to have to get back to work. But it's just the experience of living in the White House, being in the White House was so incredible. But then, as I said, we had to get back to work.
That's right. Business as usual. All right, we're going to Charles, who goes by Skip. Mr. President, he says, once you get elected, how fast will you bring back good industry jobs for people like me that are highly skilled in construction and building? It's terribly difficult for me to find a job that pays well for my skills competing with illegal immigrant labor in California.
That's right. Well, we're going to bring them back fast, and we're going to get the wall built and completed. You know, we built almost 500 miles of wall. We had another 200 ready to go. It was actually built, fabricated. All we had to do is, we had a rigged election. All we had to do is put it up, and they decided not to put it up, which is rather incredible. And people flowed into our country at levels that we've never seen before, and it really did affect a lot of very good people, or very talented people, like the man asking the question. It's all going to go very quickly. We're going to get the wall completed, and we can do it very fast. We're going to go back to our policies, remain in Mexico, and all sorts of things that we had that people now are looking at it. You know, all he had to do is go to the beach. If he went to the beach like he has been lately and just left everything alone, we would have the safest border anywhere. We had the safest border in the history of our country 3 years ago. Now we have the worst border in the history of the world. I mean, there's never been a thing like this. We're being invaded. This is like a foreign invasion from 129 countries. Last week, that over 129 countries coming in and represented. It's so sad to see. So I understand your question fully, and I will say that we're going to have that whole situation taken care of. In addition to that, we're going to produce energy. We're going to get you going. We're going to get you working. You're going to be able to get low interest rates again, and you're going to be able to buy houses. You know, right now nobody's buying housing because the banks don't have the money and their interest rates are too high. And so many bad things have happened, it's hard to believe. We were energy independent, think of it, 3 years ago, and today we're begging Venezuela for energy. It's just very sad. You'll have a job, you'll have a great job, you have a high-paying job, and it'll be soon.
So is it fair to say, Mr. President, we'll get those jobs back just as quickly as Joe Biden was able to get rid of them?
Well, he got rid of them pretty quickly. That's hard to match. I tell you, he got rid of a lot of great jobs.
We have faith in you.
He got rid of a lot of things, and he brought a lot of problems like inflation that should have never happened. Afghanistan, when you look, that was the lowest point in the history of our country. So we're going to move very quickly.
All right, speaking of moving quickly, Victor asks, what do you plan to do in the first 90 days of your presidency?
Well, I can tell you in the first day, what I'm going to do is we're going to close up the border and we're going to start drilling. And we're going to get energy costs down, and we can do a lot of things at one time. You know, somebody said, what's the first thing? I said, there's no first thing. There's about 12 first things. But 2 of them will be exactly that. We're going to close up the border. We're going to let people know that you're not supposed to be here, and we're going to have to take a lot of people out. We're going to have to do that because we have millions and millions of people poured into our country. With no country, this isn't sustainable for any country, let alone this country. No country's even wealthy enough to do it. But we're going to be getting a lot of these people out fairly quickly. Many of them come, as you know, from prisons and from mental institutions. Many are terrorists. We had no terrorists. You know, we had a time, it was, I saw it on one of the newscasts the other day, in a certain long period of time in 2019, there were no terrorists reported coming in. And now you look, it's got record numbers. It's got record number of terrorists coming in addition to the prisoners, the mental institutions. So we're going to straighten it out very quickly.
All right. What is the thing you are most proud of during your presidency that most people don't know about? This is coming from Justin.
Well, I think there are a lot. Everybody knows about the economy. We produced the greatest economy in the history of the world, not only for this country, you could compare it to any country, no country compared to us. I think that was something that was really great. I would say that the border they knew about. We had a great border. We had a safe border. We had the safest border in the history of our country also. I think one of the things that we did that we don't get enough credit for was COVID. Because when COVID came, nobody knew what it was. You know, the word pandemic, nobody even knew what that meant. And where was it coming from? It came from Wuhan. I was able to say that very early. It came from China. And we made decisions that were great decisions. And I think we did a really great job considering what we were up against. It was a total unknown thing. We call it the dust from China just blew in. It was a horrible thing to have to go through. And then we built the economy, rebuilt the economy, so the stock market was actually higher than just prior to the China virus, as I call it, coming in.
We remember.
But we did a great job with the ventilators, with the gowns, with the masks, with the equipment, with everything. And we let the Republican governors run their own states. We let all governors run their states, but the Democrats closed up, and some of the Republicans kept them open. And they did a very good job.
Yeah, so there's, of course, always praise for the economy and for border security, but perhaps COVID is what we don't focus on enough. All right, Mr. President, Kelly wants to know, well, she says you are the greatest president that's ever lived. We love you so much. You take all the slings and arrows for us. But with all the stress and struggle and attack you face day after day for so many years, Mr. President, Kelly wants to know if you ever cry.
Wow, that's an interesting question. Well, Kelly, I want to cry. I want to cry so badly, but I don't have time because we're in there fighting for you, Kelly, so I don't have time. Maybe someday I'll have some time, but I don't have time.
I think Americans are all crying right now. What do we think, Mr.
Oh, they are crying.
Yeah.
Americans are crying. And, you know, I've never had spirit like this. We go around and we won the first time. We did much better the second time. In the second election, we did much better. We got millions and millions more votes. And Americans cried, but now they're really crying because what's happened is this group has turned out to be far worse than anybody. Look, he's the worst president in the history of our country. Just yesterday, they gave $6 billion to ransom money. They gave $6 billion. What does that mean? That means these people are going to start saying, let's grab anybody we can. This guy gave $6 billion. I never gave money for ransom. We got from the toughest countries in the world, got 58 people out and we never paid.
That's right.
Once you pay, it's a very bad
Sets a precedent, doesn't it?
It's a very bad precedent. So, well, I appreciate that. I don't have time to cry, but I'll have to think about it.
Okay, moving on. This question is from Alex and Don. They say, Mr. President, you easily made this most interesting decade in recent history. Well, that's for sure. My father and I have bonded over your presidency over the last 8 years, but it started by listening to your audiobooks as he drove me to school as a young child. My question is, what did you anticipate your time would be like as president before assuming the office, and how did the reality differ?
Well, it is much different. It's great power, but it was also met with great force, great dishonest force. Mm-hmm. When you have Adam Shifty Schiff and Nancy Pelosi, Crazy Nancy as I call her, you had so many forces against us. They didn't want us to succeed. And despite that, like as an example with the wall, they wouldn't fund the wall. I ended up taking it out of the military, and I got it built with the military because I considered it really an invasion. And I think the Democrats and some Republicans, rhinos as we call them, you know what a rhino is, right? Republican in name only. That's a Republican in name only. We have a lot of rhinos too, although fewer and fewer. But they made it very difficult, and I would say that I fought harder. I think the job was made more difficult by the opposition. And even to this day, they've weaponized the Justice Department. They've done things, but it's actually made me more popular. As crazy as it is, it's made me more popular, and we're doing better now than we've ever done.
That brings up a question that I read before that stood out to me, and I think I know your answer on this. So Dominique and Lori both want to know, what are your thoughts on abolishing the IRS, Mr. President, and most other three-letter agencies, the FBI, the CIA?
Well, there's a lot of thought being given to it. I will tell you, not 3 letters, but the Department of Education, we're going to demolish, and just literally we're going to end it immediately. We have one of the worst educational systems anywhere in the world. If you look at 40 basic, they cover 40. We're always at the bottom, and yet we spend 2 or 3 times more per pupil than anybody else. They have Denmark, they have Norway, they have Sweden, they have China, who's very high on the list. We're very low on the list. So obviously we're doing something wrong. We're going to end the Department of Education. We're going to bring it back to the states. Let the states do it. And I wouldn't say in all cases, but some of these states are going to do an incredible job with education. It's going to be a whole different ballgame. This is terrible what's happened, the bureaucracy.
Right.
You have buildings all over Washington, right now, all over Washington, D.C., loaded up with Department of Education. And I want to bring it back to the states, give them an almost equivalent, we'd save a lot of money actually, but give them a certain amount of money, a fraction of what we're spending right now, and let the states run education.
Yeah, especially what we saw during the COVID pandemic.
Absolutely,
how
it was
strong
terrible. It was
these
terrible.
teacher unions can be. If you had to choose one moment during your presidency as your biggest achievement, what would it be and why?
Well, we did a lot of great humanitarian achievements. We did, as an example, so many different cures for different diseases. We did so much in the world of medical, but if I was going to be, let's normalize it a little bit, in terms of getting some legislation passed, we got the biggest tax cuts in the history of our country, bigger than the Ronald Reagan tax cuts, and that was done relatively early. And people have been paying far less tax than they would have been paying. And the other thing, the jobs that we created, the most in history for this country, the jobs, and I think the regulation cutting. We cut more regulations in a short period of time than any other president, by double and maybe even triple.
That's pretty
Well, that's what gave us the job, to be honest.
hefty list there. All right, Eric C. says, I'm a tech worker that's been unemployed since 2021. I'm sure a lot of Americans can relate to that. No one is hiring or willing to train workers despite Biden's claims. Mr. President, would you consider a different approach to promote hiring and training, such as tax credits to hire and train unqualified workers that are seeking opportunities to switch into other industries and roles?
So the answer is yes, but we're going to have so many industries and so many companies, especially tech companies, wanting to come back into the United States because we incentivize them. This administration incentivizes companies to leave. I call it China First policy. They have a China First policy. They're afraid to do anything with China. I took in billions, hundreds of billions of dollars from China in the form of taxes and tariffs. And it was forcing companies not to go there because it was expensive to come back in. And they build their companies. Now people are leaving, and companies are leaving, and the country is suffering in so many ways. We are suffering in so many ways. I heard, as an example, I watched the United Nations speech today, if you call it a speech, that Biden made. And he talked about weapons of mass destruction, how we are getting rid of, we won't go into it too much because frankly, it's not a good thing to talk about, but how we have terminated and ended certain weapons of mass destruction, and how upset he is that other countries haven't done it. Well, who would do it before they do it? You're supposed to do it at the same time. We'll let them do it first, frankly. But we've gotten rid of certain weapons of mass destruction that we just found out about. I think it's news to a lot of people, and other countries have not followed suit.
Right.
This is the same group that negotiated $6 billion for, for trade, where they got 5, Iran, they got 5, we got 5. But in addition to the 5 people, they got $6 billion.
So this young gentleman, I think, speaks for so many Americans who
it's
are
true.
so lost right now. And God forbid they want to actually switch careers or get into another industry. They can barely find a job right now, Mr. President.
Well, you hear about the phony job numbers, when you hear 3.7, 3.8%, and these are phony numbers because a lot of people aren't looking, they're not incentivized to look, and they've been unable to get, so they're off the rolls. So it makes it look like we have a better job picture than we do. We don't have a good job picture.
But your message to this young gentleman and to all the Americans out there is...
Stay tuned.
Okay, Angie from South Carolina says, President Trump, I was a police officer in Winston-Salem, North Carolina for 30 years. I was also bomb squad commander. This girl sounds like a boss.
Wow.
We did a lot of dignitary sweeps and protection duty. I can honestly say from all the dignitaries we had to deal with, you made the biggest impression on not only me, but with all the guys in those details. To me, that says a lot about you and your character. Angie's question for us is, what is/was your biggest failure in life, and did it change or influence who you are today and what you've done with your life since?
Well, I think the thing, if you look historically, and this a lot of people could say, but it's about people. You have to get the right people. In government, I had a lot of great people. We did the biggest tax cuts. We rebuilt the military. We knocked out ISIS. We knocked out a lot of things and then brought everybody back home. We did a lot of great things, but also I had some people that weren't as good as they should have been. And I would say that we need people, great people, to head up these agencies, to head up when you talk about law enforcement and all of these different thousands and tens of thousands and really ultimately millions of people. Yeah. You need the right people. I got a lot of it right, but I came to Washington only having been to Washington 17 days of my life, according to the newspapers. That's what they tell me. I didn't know that, but that's what they tell me. I never stayed over. And I built a hotel in Washington on Pennsylvania Avenue. It worked out great and did things, but I was only there 17 times, so I didn't really know the Washington establishment. But now I know it. Now I know it. And we know the good ones and the bad ones, and we know the weak ones and the strong ones and the smart ones, and we've got them all lined up.
So is it the relationships, you would say?
I think relationships is very, very important, especially when you're talking about government and running these they're massive. Right. In a way, they're massive companies. Like if you compare Johnson & Johnson with Health and Human Services, or Johnson & Johnson is like a small subsidiary. So you need great people, and I had a lot of great people. We had a lot of terrific people. We had some that I wouldn't call great at all. And, you rely on people, but now I very much I know Washington about as well as anybody, I think. I know the people, the good ones and the bad ones.
So was there a relationship, for Angie here, was there a relationship that you had in your past that maybe influenced how you handled the White House or your presidency?
Well, probably my father, because my father was great. He was strong, tough, but fair. He would always, when it was somebody in the old days, I don't know if you see it so much anymore, but used to have people sitting out with tin cups. He'd always put money in the tin cup. He was just a great guy, and yet he was a very strong guy. And I think I learned a lot about my father. One of the things I learned is that he loved his business. He built houses in Queens and Brooklyn and built things, and he loved doing it. I mean, he could do it 7 days a week, frankly, and he'd rest on Sunday, but he'd do it 7 days a week if he could get away with it.
He was passionate, right.
He was passionate, and without passion, I just don't see a lot of people succeed. You have to be passionate. You have to love what you do.
Yeah, that's a lovely message for Angie there. All right, moving to Bradley. He says, aside from golf and your family, which we know how important those two are to you, what puts a smile on your face, Mr. President?
Well, it is family always first, and golf is way, way, way behind. Probably a lot of us.
And you have a beautiful family.
Yeah, I do. It's a great family, a wonderful family. But I think maybe more than anything else is I love business, or I love what I'm doing now. I love, we're running for office, and I have my kids running the business, a great business, and we do a fantastic job with the business, and they're running it and doing a good job. And now I'm focused on campaigning. We're going from here to lots of locations over the next month. We're going to have rallies all over the country. They do great. I think maybe hotter than ever before. It's
So
crazy.
interacting with the folks on the
Yeah,
campaign trail and at these rallies.
And
that-
enjoying what you do. I
Yeah.
enjoy it. Somebody else would say, you have to get before all those people, and then you add television to it, right?
That's
But,
right.
and you know, you have a lot of opposition. You have people opposing what you're doing, and they're jealous, and they're nasty, and they're mean. Somebody asked me, would I consider to be, who's worse, business people or politicians? And for the first couple of days, I said, about 2 days it took me, I said, oh, by far tougher and worse are business people. After about a month, I said, they're not even close.
Only took a month.
It took about a month. I said, they're not even close, these guys, because the politicians are so deceptive, and something about, not in all cases, in some cases I have wonderful people that do a great job for representing our country, but I would say it's not even close.
So we've been on the campaign trail, and I've been in those crowds, and they are always so amazed at the energy and how long you can speak, Mr. President, in the heat, in the rain, on that stage, and the energy you always bring is so inspiring. So it's the secret, I guess you're saying, is the passion, and that always makes you excited, and you're always smiling, interacting with
Well, you know, with the
everyone.
rallies, so sometimes I'll be 2 hours and speaking.
We
and
know.
much of it is off the cuff. You've seen this.
Yes.
And I actually enjoy doing it. People say, how do you do that?
There's
How
no
do you-"
teleprompter there. There's
No,
no
well,
teleprompter.
and when there is, I'm off the teleprompter half the time.
Yeah.
And usually it turns out to be the things that they like best. And plus, you never know exactly what's going to happen, right? But, you know, people have said, 2 hours, how do you do that? And you have to do it because, you know, some of these people have waited 3, 4, 5 days. They
They have.
literally tent out, and you have
No
tens-
bathrooms, they don't care
No,
about
nothing.
food.
I don't know how they do it. I mean, and they're incredible people, some very successful people
Yes.
too, where they'll come in and they'll be there for 5, 6 days before a rally. And we try and make it as comfortable as possible, but it's an incredible thing. It's a great scene. And so I don't want to run off in 45 minutes. You know, I don't know. I feel very guilty about making a half-hour speech. I could do a half-hour speech, but we stay, and it's very much a love fest. It really is. It's
It is.
amazing. It's easy to do. You know, a friend of mine who has stage fright, he's very smart, very tough, and very, you know, successful. He'd love to be a politician. He said, well, that he suffers from stage fright. I said, I don't think that would be a good job. But he said, how do you do it for so long? I said, there's such love at these rallies. You know what I mean?
I do.
And speeches generally, but the rallies, when I do these
Really can
rallies,
feel it, yeah.
you really, it's not hard to do. There's such incredible feeling and love.
You get inspired from that energy, from
I get
it's love of
inspired.
country, and people are so longing
Yeah.
again for an America First agenda, and for you back in that White House. And
They're longing, you're right.
yeah,
They're
that's
longing.
coming from speaking to people in all across this country. I mean, we have traveled to most of these rallies, and I always tell my peers and colleagues that that energy is different every single time. I'm amazed every single time at these people, you're right, that have camped out for days, and just the light on their face when they see you walk out on that stage and we're playing those America First songs. It's so inspiring.
It's a beautiful thing, actually. I tell people, I say, you know, it's not hard, because they say, it's like, we were in South Carolina recently,
Yes.
we had, I think, 82,000 people, right? It took the whole town, Pickens, it took the whole town, all the streets were packed, everything. There was no auditorium you could have for that many people, 82,000 people. This person said, how do you get up before that many people? And it's almost like easy, because there's so much love. And you're right, you said the word, they're longing for something. They're so disgusted at this stupid person that's running our country right now. It's horrible. He can't put 2 sentences together. He can't speak properly.
I think his rallies are a little bit different than yours.
His
What do you
rallies-
think?
His rallies don't exist. He's-
In the basement,
he's got 8 circles that they can't fill up. They use the press to fill them up.
They'll
No, but
circle
look,
back to
it's
us.
a sad thing for our country.
Yes, okay, speaking of an off-the-cuff question, Mr. President, this comes from an anonymous viewer who says, if you had to get lunch with one of the Bidens, would it be Hunter Biden or the man in the White House right now, Mr. Joe Biden?
Well, that's an interesting question. It's one I haven't thought of too much. I think I'd take Hunter, because it would probably be more
Entertaining.
interesting.
Entertaining.
No, I think it would be probably more interesting. He's definitely mixed up and got a lot of problems. but maybe in terms of interest, it might be very much more interesting.
Yeah, I don't know if Joe Biden could make it to dinner time, right?
I don't know what he
Has
does.
to fit in a nap or two.
I just know that it's so sad what's happened to our country. In a period of a few years, I've never seen anything like it. When you look at the invasion, you look at all of the problems. But I think I'd take Hunter.
All right, well, that anonymous viewer hopefully gets a kick out of that one. Okay, we're going to Keenan, who says, which is your favorite state and why? I don't know if you can answer that for us.
I'm not going to be answering that because all of a sudden I'll lose 49 different, they'll say, what happened to this?
Well, what's the next state you're visiting? I believe it's Ohio.
I'll be in Ohio. I'll be in Michigan. We're going to be doing a big thing in Michigan with United Auto Workers, actually, who have been just, I mean, they're going to be decimated because we're going to build all our cars in China, which is standard for us because we don't know what we're doing. And this didn't happen during the Trump administration, but we're going to be building our cars. Think of it. It's going to go all electric. So if you want to ride long distances, you won't be able to do it. The whole thing is crazy. But the other thing is they're made in China.
Yes.
And so I'm visiting very soon with the United Auto Workers. It'll be great.
All right, Mr. President, speaking of the future, Kelly says, do you see a time in the future where the common man won't have to work 2 to 3 jobs or have both parents working in order to comfortably live?
Well, we're coming to that now, and sometimes it's supposed to be the opposite. There are also people wanting to work 4-day weeks and 3-day weeks and 2-day weeks, and we never want to go to an office, and lots of things. But people are having to work much harder today than they did 3 years ago. They're not making ends meet. Inflation is a country buster. Inflation, if you look back 200 years at countries, and inflation has destroyed Germany. Many, many countries have been literally destroyed by inflation. And we're going through a massive inflation right now. Today, for the first time in a while,
Yes.
The gasoline hit over $5, as an example. And it's only going up. It's only going up.
Americans are feeling that.
So this has been a really bad time for a lot of people, absolutely.
Well, another stay tuned, I guess, for the American people. Mr. President, thank you so much for being with us. And thank you to our Trump digital trading card collectors. Before we let the president go, last question for you is, what is your message come 2024 for all your voters out there?
I just want everybody to be successful. I know that what we've done with the trading cards has been great. People are really happy and they love them, and I love them. I mean, I think it's really tremendous artwork. They've done a great job, and I know the people are so happy, and that's why we're doing this. But I just want to have this country be really successful, because that will give people the opportunity for success. If you're in an unsuccessful country, it's going to be very hard to be successful. We had it going like never before. We got hit with COVID, then I redid it again. But we have a chance to really make America great again. That's my whole message, make America great again. And they have destroyed so much in such a short period of time. We will bring it back very, very fast, and you'll have greater success than ever before.
Well, Mr. President, thank you for making America great again in all these new and exciting ways always. We appreciate this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.